Did you ever see Christmas Twister?
I did not know that was a thing. There's Christmas Twister, adding to the list immediately.
Yeah, Christmas
I don't care if it's
Twister.
good or not,
I'm so happy to hear that because
because
it's
it's not.
yes. I mean, that's why I like talking to you, Mike, because you and I like we understand that a movie doesn't necessarily have to be good to be good.
Yeah, a
What do you
lot
think?
aren't, and there's there's so much quality and like so good it's bad, but then there's also some that people are like, "Oh yeah, this movie's so good it's bad." I'm like, "I or so bad it's good." And there's many people who are like, "Oh yeah, this movie's so bad it's good." And I just look at it and I'm like, "I think it's good for being good." Like, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Sharknado is not a so bad it's good. I actually think it's just a good horror comedy.
yeah, yeah, I
No, people
agree.
are like, "Oh, that movie's terrible." And it's like, "But it's so good because it's terrible." I'm like, "No, it's just funny. Like it's
Yeah,
silly, and that was the point. It's a sci-fi original.
right.
Like those movies are not meant to be cinematic experiences."
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm like, what is good and what is bad? I always ask people that now in the horror mosaic because you hear that term thrown around a lot, especially on social media when we speak in such extremes, and but no one ever stops to question what it means. So I
yeah.
think I also appreciate what you talk about on Mike and Serial, even though it says Mike Unofficial on your Zoom name here, so we got to fix that. But but um, I think that that's a great thing that you do. You show that, and you confidently recommend things that you know are going to be controversial in terms of are people going to love it or hate it. And but you just are passionate about your movies. You know why you like them. You share your personal experience watching them, and so that's why people want to listen to you. And so they take your advice, whether they should or not.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because at the end of the day, I think the horror com it's so funny that you say because people do go into the extremes and they're like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. This is the best movie I've ever seen. And then 2 minutes later, this is the best movie I've ever seen. But where we really come down to is we do those hyperbole like expressions, but we also know as a horror community, we it's so easy for us to get caught up in the I'm right, you're wrong. But
Right.
at the same time, we also understand that horror is subjective. So
Yeah.
that's the funny thing to me is like, we're so quick to be like, no, you're wrong. This is so great. But we're like, but you have your own opinion and it's valid. And it's like, let's take that approach again.
Yeah,
Like, let's take
that's
the
true.
approach of horror is subjective. And obviously, we know that there's widely known movies that are like either cream of the crop, and then there's very widely known and agreed upon movies that are just not that great. But you have those little anomalies all over the place of they think some of the best movies, they're like, I don't see it. I don't understand why people like this movie. And then you have people like myself who think Exorcist Believer is a very good movie. And
Ooh,
I I don't understand why it gets so much hate. I feel that David Gordon Green should have been allowed to finish the trilogy. I
ooh,
think Mike Flanagan's gonna do an amazing job. I'm so
sure.
excited for what he's gonna do. I just think in the next 10 years, people are gonna ease up on Believer and they're
Ooh,
gonna understand that it it deserved some. I'm not saying it's the best movie. It's not the best, but like people really go hard on that movie, and I'm just there. I am a believer. I have a few
ooh,
friends
that's
who
a
are
good one.
believers,
Okay.
and yeah, we've been like we champion that movie hard, probably more than we actually like it because we're just like. I enjoyed it, but I think it turned out to be like a lot of people that I speak to, they associate that movie with me in a way of like, I have to keep reminding people like it's not my favorite movie. Because the way we talk about it, some people think like, wow, I can't believe like that's one of your favorite movies. I'm like, it's not, but
You just
I
talk
will
like every movie is
champion
your favorite.
I will champion it because I think it's not as bad as other people say it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
I walked out of the theater and I texted my friend who we watch movies and we give each other recommendations. And I told her, I was like, you're gonna want to see this in theaters. This is actually really good. I'm so excited for people to uh start giving it good reviews. And it did not go in my favor at all.
I'm shocked, Mike. I'm shocked. But and I totally think what you're saying is completely valid, and I think that you're probably right that it will receive a reappraisal 10 years from now, maybe sooner. Um, and I'm definitely a hater, but I totally appreciate your. I'm not a hater. I'm like a just move on and do the next thing. Or, however, I would say if it did not have the name Exorcist on it, and the Exorcist means a lot to me personally, so that's my baggage. Um, if it didn't have that name on it, then I probably would have liked it a lot better because I probably would have felt that it was leaning into some cheesy aspect that I really love in a lot of movies. So I think maybe just call it Believer.
And you know what? I've totally agree with you because I have like list of movies that I believe are not bad movies. They just have the unfortunate name, which obviously was
Yeah,
intentional. But like if you removed their identity from the franchise that they are a part of, they're not bad movies. Are they
yeah,
great? No, but they are nowhere near as bad. And I feel that Exorcist Believer falls into that category. I think
yeah,
that is a huge thing. It's not just your baggage. I think that's a large pe amount of people's perception is this has nothing to do with Exorcist. It was a
right.
cheap tie-in to The Exorcist,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and they didn't like what they did with the part of The Exorcist
You
that was
got it.
involved.
Yeah, you got it.
And I think if you took that small element out of it, like you said, name it Believer, you got a fun, again, albeit cheesy, like
Yeah.
the CGI aspect during the exorcism did that was a lot to muster through. But you just had a fun, cheesy possession movie.
Yeah,
But unfortunately, it was an exorcist movie. But
yeah,
I also like to point out to people, with the exception of three, which garnered a lot of hate when it first came out, it became a cult classic. But
yeah.
minus three, is there a good
No,
Exorcist companionship movie?
no.
So I don't know what you were expecting from Believer.
No, you make really good points and very convincing
Yeah.
arguments, and I've been listening to these things ever since that movie came out, and I have not revisited the movie, so I will definitely revisit it. Um, do you think it's a Christmas movie?
Is it? Is it
Is
centered
it?
around Christmas?
I don't
Because I'm
know. I
like,
can't. I was trying to remember that.
oh, okay. Because I'm like, if there's any element of Christmas, then sure. I'm all so Christmas horror is not like my most favorite of genres.
Yeah,
There's a lot. It's funny because I feel like it's very polarizing for me.
yeah,
I think there's fantastic Christmas horror movies, and then I think there's really, really bad ones. There's very few that fall in the middle to me.
yeah.
But I think that's Christmas in general for me because I'm like, I have my movies that I love, and then I'm like, I don't want to watch these movies. Um, but kind of
I
going back
understand.
to the
Yeah,
curse of like a name and bringing back into Christmas, the 2019-2020 Black Christmas.
yeah. Oh God.
I had a fun time with that movie,
Oh,
but it was not Black Christmas. It
right.
didn't
Yeah,
have
there you
any
go.
resemblance to at least Exorcist Believer tried to tie it in. That
Yeah,
movie just said, we want people to come see this movie. If we make it, if we market it as what it is, which is like a female empowerment Christmas magical slasher movie, which is a very niche thing to
yeah.
try and sell, I don't think it would have done well. So they were like, hey, let's slap the name Black Christmas on it.
Probably, yeah.
And I think that was the worst thing that they could have done. Because had they named it something else, that movie is in like my top half of Christmas horror movies because
Wow.
I
Okay.
fun time with it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, this is not Black Christmas. Because at least the 2006 campy, outrageous remake of Black Christmas, like Black Xmas,
Yeah.
that
Ah,
was tied into the original Black Christmas movie.
right.
And I had a fun time with that one too. I love all the Black Christmas movies,
Wow.
but
Okay. That's but what I love is I've never even considered, even though it seems so simple and obvious, considered just watching the movie with and trying to take that pressure off of it, you know? And it just seems obvious now that you're talking about it this way, but it's still in the moment, it's really hard to do. So I should just try to do it.
But I mean, that's the whole point of names. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it's so important to pick the right name and just
Yeah.
like the right posters. Because bringing it back to the old blockbuster Hollywood video days, half the time you're didn't matter if you don't know what movie you're gonna watch. You picked it off of the poster.
Yep.
Like you looked for the cover art and you're like, this looks crazy. And you either got a masterpiece of a movie like The Dentist, which I love,
Oh,
um, or
yes.
you got a very interesting movie that has its cult following, but might not be the greatest, but it has a great poster like Jack Frost.
Mike, I am not kidding. Whenever you started talking about this, I was like, Jack Frost is the one. Like it's
Yes.
burned into my brain, you know?
I think I think that's the Jack for me, Jack Frost and The Dentist are the two movies I think of when you talk about the video store culture that we had. Those are the two movies I think of the most because
Yeah,
those weren't movies that went to theater, or if they did, it was a limited release kind of thing. Maybe Jack
yeah.
Frost made it, but I know The Dentist didn't. But those were the movies
No.
that you looked and they were in the back of the back.
Right. I love it.
And that's what video stores were to me. That's what Tubi is to me. Tubi is the closest thing that we have to a video store. And I do it the same way. I'm scrolling, I'm looking through these videotapes, and it's a poster that catches me or a name that catches me.
Yep.
Like
Silly
that
names are great.
silly names are great. And, or like you said, if you have something that sounds like something,
Yeah.
because especially in the 90s, we had like when a big movie, like we'll just say Scream, went to theaters, you had not, and I'm not talking about like I Know What You Did Last Summer. You had those like 50 direct-to-video made in 3-month movies that
Yeah.
were basically carbon copies of Scream
Right.
with
Exactly.
cheesy names, cheesy posters.
Yeah.
And you were like, hey, maybe I'm gonna find the diamond in the rough here. Maybe I found
I'm
the
gonna
new
eat it
Scream.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10, you didn't, but sometimes you did.
It's so worth it.
And I think, but like you said, the hard part though is because but going back to Black Christmas 2019, because it's named that, that's your first
Yeah.
impression. It's hard to erase a first impression.
Exactly.
So that's why I think they shouldn't have gone that route, but maybe that's what got people in the theater.
Right. It's extremely risky, and no one knows that more than David Gordon Green, as you've highlighted. He did it twice. So, and you know what? God damn it. The Twitter people were right because they told me in a few years you're gonna admire his guts. And yeah, I think they were right about that. Like I didn't in the beginning I was irritated, but over time I think I now the movies themselves it's been a little more difficult for me to not be sour on
Yeah.
in some ways. But these conversations, like in the way you described it, I mean, you convinced me to rewatch Believer, you know, and give it a chance to take the name off. So that's a really good skill.
And funny enough, that is like kind of what I love to do in
Yeah,
horror. Like I have such a good horror community, and like we said, the community I have, we don't always agree on things, but it's not this my opinion's better than yours, your opinion's better than mine situation. It's we all love, I think it's more fun with my group of friends that we don't have always the same taste. Like there are so many
Absolutely.
people that I'm like, I don't know why you like the things you like, but it always gives me something fun to watch. Like
Mm.
I believe you interviewed them, Our Life in Horror.
Yep,
Sam.
absolutely.
Sam
Mm.
will recommend movies, and I think I told her this morning. I'm like, listen, I love your recommendations because they may not always hit. I might not always love them, but I'm never, ever bored with a recommendation from her.
Absolutely.
I have
Yeah.
never been bored from something that I watched because of her. Did I
Yep.
like them all? No. But I always was like, well, that was a movie I watched, and I was left very like entertained nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Oh, for
like.
sure.
Like, and I like doing that
Absolutely.
for people too. People who you don't have, and like you said, if you're gonna rewatch Believer, you don't have to like it this time around. You could still say, you know what, I tried, I disliked it. What I like though is like, hey, I'm talking to people and I can convince people to rewatch something that they had strong negative opinions about. Cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's perfect. And it helps also model a great way of discourse as it comes to movies because we highlighted a lot of times it's just talking in very extreme things and then people start insulting each other and then it's not fun anymore. So I think it just shows like this is a more interesting, engaging, and more positive way to engage in discussions about movies. Welcome back, everybody, to the Bitter Wolves. Ho ho horrible. I don't have a title. What do you think? Horrible Christmas?
I liked that. I liked the ho ho horrible Christmas. I think that's
Okay.
good.
Did someone else do that before though?
I have not seen it.
That's the
I
thing.
don't
I'm like,
keep many
did I think of
Christmas.
this or did I take it by accident? You know?
I mean, there's so many things that are like taken kind
True,
of thing.
true.
I always
Especially in
put it,
horror.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, so we're Mike and Serial now, by the way. That's going really well. You want to talk a little bit about Mike and Serial too? I forgot to ask you about that. Just
Oh
promote
yeah.
yourself.
So I'm originally Mike Unofficial, which started from me being involved in the Twitch community as a viewer. Um, I started getting on Twitter, all different social medias, gaining a lot of more community in the horror community, and putting myself out there, like being a guest on different podcasts, YouTube channels. And then I just kind of started posting my love of found footage way more often. I feel like I found my voice in that passion through found footage, and I kind of realized that that's where like my numbers started growing. I started having more people want to put me on their podcast for found footage stuff, and it started becoming more fun. And again, there might be things that I want to do with it later on, but I felt with that new like growth in community numbers, etc. I wanted to tie myself back into something that kind of showcases that I am a found footage person. I'm definitely not an expert, but I will say, like, in social media, the horror community that I've made, I do know that a lot of my friends, and just other people, they do look to my recommendations for found footage. It's a fun thing to have people like look to you for something specific. So I wanted to put something there, and I was looking for a new name for a little bit. Uh, I had something else in the works, but I felt it was too complicated. And as I was going through that, a movie came out called Milk and Cereal, which is a
Great
found
movie.
footage movie on YouTube. by Curry Barker and his team. Uh, and I really enjoyed it. I like really enjoyed it. I started talking about it immediately. The movie was blowing up anyways, but I my recommendation was really out there where people were like, "Hey, he said this movie, let's go give it a chance." And people were taking my recommendation, giving me credit for watching, saying that they watched that movie. And then it kind of just hit me because I'm like, I wanted my name since Mike has always been a part of my social media, and that's the name that people know me because that's also part of my real name. I wanted something to tie into it, so Mike and cereal playing off of milk and cereal. So it's a fun way to acknowledge the found footage passion that I have, but
Yeah.
also it's not too specific that I can like do other stuff without feeling like I'm pigeonholed to
Right.
a particular genre.
Right.
So I think it tussles both ends of what I wanted. Something of my own personal identity and something of my identity to the found footage horror community.
Yeah.
So that's where Mike and Serial came about.
It's amazing. I like it a lot, and I'm really excited to see you doing more and more as time goes on, and listening to you on Rise from the Dead podcast, so you could hear your confidence growing as time goes on as well. So that's really fun to watch and hear. And thank you for keeping me company as I drove through Atlanta this time specifically, because sometimes that could be stressful, you
Yeah.
know. But you live in Chicago, so what am I talking about? But you don't drive in Chicago, do you?
Oh, I do. I drive everywhere.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I drive everywhere. Right now, because I work downtown and you don't want to park downtown because it's so expensive. If it wasn't expensive, I would drive all the time. But like everywhere else, I love driving.
Okay.
I and I haven't done it post pandemic uh or post quarantine. But I used to do many different mini road trips because live in the Midwest, there's a lot of other major cities that I can get to within
Right.
under 4 hours. So I would love just spending doing day trips or weekend trips up in Wisconsin, Missouri, Indiana, etc.
So you spend a lot of time in St. Louis?
Not as much. I definitely do want to start doing that a little bit more in St. Louis. Because
Yeah.
the past 3 times I went, I've had a fun time.
Um, I'm calling BS on something you said. You said that
Uh-oh.
you are not a found footage expert. So I think you're being too humble. What do you think?
I think that I am a found footage enthusiast. I don't like using the word expert because
Okay.
I feel that that means that I should know everything. Like I should know
Oh,
every director, writer, like things like that.
okay.
And I'm like, I don't know how much movies were made for off the top of my head. There's
I see.
certain ones that I actually do know that because I like to reach out to the directors because micro budget films have been booming this year specifically. There's been some great horror movies that have come out and they are telling you like this was shot for $800, this was shot for $200. There's a movie that I actually enjoyed that was shot for $4. Um,
That's very specific. I love that. What was the
so
movie?
it's called New Folder and it's
I
also
oh,
on
I want to watch
YouTube.
this. Yeah.
It's hard to find, so I'll send you a link.
Okay. Fantastic.
Because it's called New Folder. So like when you're searching on YouTube, New Folder, so many different things pop up of like, hey, how to do this in Word stuff. So I'll send you the link. It's honestly that will also be a very divisive movie. Like I said, it's a $4 budget. Um, and it looks like it, but not in a bad way. Because I actually think that the $4 budget is why I love the movie so much. This
Yeah.
is the most immersive movie that I have felt involved in. Like I was very uncomfortable watching this movie
Ooh.
because it was so grainy. It was so, we always say within the found footage community, what we love about it is that you do feel a part of the movie.
Yeah.
This one was so low budget that without spoiling all of it, but it's from a stalker point of view. And
Ooh. All
because it's
right.
so low budget, you feel like you're doing something wrong. You feel like you're the person who's doing the stalking. And it's this really uncomfortable moment between you and what you're watching.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So it's a movie that I really enjoy, but I do know that a lot of people will watch it and not feel what I felt. They'll
Yeah,
say
sure.
nothing happened in this movie. And while that sort of is correct, I think what the movie is about is the feeling.
Yeah. Okay.
And it
That's
worked
great.
for me.
I love
Uh,
that too. And that's like with your recommendations, like I said, you just give your personal experience with it, how it affected you, usually in some emotional way. And so people want to have a kind of emotional feeling. It might be different for everyone, so they seek it out. Maybe it doesn't work for them, but that's okay. At least you tried, you know?
yeah.
It's like, and I think you want to seek it out, and when it does work, then it's wonderful. And I think I probably pursued more of your recommendations solely because of the way that you talk about the movies. And sometimes they hit for me, sometimes they don't. That's that's great because I got a few hits.
Yeah. And thank you, because again, like I love found footage. One, because I love the movies, I love the people that create those movies, but what I've been enjoying more is within that passion of watching those movies, talking about those movies, that's where I really, like you said, I feel like I found my confidence in speaking about those movies.
Yeah,
I am a much more like soft-spoken, reserved type person, so I never thought that I would be doing podcasts, jumping on YouTube channels. This was not something that I saw for myself. It was something I always wanted for myself, but like I'm always refer to myself as much more mousier type person. But
okay.
once I started writing about found footage and seeing people's reactions of like, hey, I watched this based on your recommendation. I loved this movie. Or people saying, I didn't see what you saw, but I love the way you talked about this movie, so I watched it.
Yep,
And hearing people say that they watched something because I personally wrote about it and recommended it, uh, did give me more confidence being able to talk about it. Um,
perfect. Yeah.
so that's kind of why like found footage always been one of my favorite genres, but now it's like holding an even more personal attachment to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's brilliant. And I do think that you will achieve, maybe you're the expert in other people's eyes right now. For you, you'll achieve expert found footage dumb very soon, I know.
Thank you.
Just keep going, right? And I love
Yeah.
because you're just always watching stuff and you're learning about stuff and you're talking about stuff. And so it's just going to keep getting better as time goes on. Oh, by the way, I wanted to give you another thing. My mother watched your horror mosaic episode. And she said that's how she was introduced to the concept of found footage. So you even taught her something new.
That is so awesome. I love that. That is
So
awesome. That's
that's
a fun
that's
fact.
your one of your Christmas gifts.
Yes, I love that. Tell her thank you.
Yes. Well, we'll pivot to Christmas a little bit.
Yeah.
Since I forgot that's kind of the point of why we were here, but that's okay. I think it doesn't matter if we talk about it too much. But do you celebrate Christmas? I didn't even ask you that.
I do celebrate Christmas, and I've gotten a little bit more into it within the past couple of years. I was never a big Christmas person.
Yeah.
Um, it just never was my holiday. But now I have like a niece and a nephew. I love being more involved with my family. I've got a lot closer to uh, my family. We've been close, but like there's more of a closeness now, and they love Christmas. So I love being a part of what they are doing. So
Mm.
we have like Christmas traditions of decorating the tree, decorating the house. My mom and I make Christmas cookies. We try. We're not good bakers whatsoever. So that's always a fun attempt of trying these new cookie recipes. Uh, so we like to do little stuff like that. But Christmas always been a part of my life. Like family, big Christmas fans. Uh, Now I'm starting to get more into the Christmas spirit.
Okay. Okay. Well, um, so you have to watch Christmas Twister then, because if
Yes.
you love Twister and disaster movies, well, my family and I, we grew up on disaster movies, and I remember on Friday nights we would always gather together, and it was our snack night, and then we'd have a double feature. And so a lot of times it would be a disaster movie, and those continue to be some of our favorites. And we watched Twisters last night, because I'm here visiting them right now, and Twister was on our constant rotation, but in the theme of Christmas, Christmas Twister is a disaster Christmas movie that's kind of Hallmark Channel-esque, I would say. I don't remember if it was actually Hallmark Channel or not. I don't think so. I don't think it was. What's that one company that does all the disaster movies, like the B disaster movies? The Asylum. Do you know
Okay.
that? Do you know
That's,
that company?
I, I probably do. If they do
Yeah.
disaster movies, then I'm pretty sure I know them.
Okay.
Because I love some B horror disaster movies.
Great. So check them out because I'm sure you've seen a bunch of them. But once you start going down that wormhole, then you'll find tons of great stuff. But the Asylum, they also did Z Nation. That's probably the best thing they did on
Okay, I
Sci-Fi
do know that.
Channel. Okay. Anyway, why was I talking about the Asylum?
Christmas
Christmas
Twister.
Twister. Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. You're gonna have to help me get back on track because I always
Hmm.
go way off. And then I forget where I was. But Christmas Twister is Casper Van Dien, from what was he in? I watched him most recently in Sleepy Hollow. Um,
Okay.
but he's been in loads of movies. I think Battleship Troopers or something. But anyway, he's the star of this, and he's the super meteorologist who's retired because of a bad thing that happened. And then, a bunch of twisters are going to come through Texas during December. It's crazy. And he's the only possible one in all of Texas who can stop them. So
Because
that's
you
it.
can stop twisters.
Stop.
Okay.
The plot of Twister movies are always the same. It's like we got to figure out how to give them enough warning to protect themselves against the Twister. So that's what it is, and it's really it's really good if you
Okay.
can
That
imagine.
one's definitely making my list now.
Yeah, I'll spoil one part for you where the Twisters have hit a shopping mall, and for some reason everyone's running around in a horrible tizzy and it's a disaster, but the mall looks totally fine. Like everywhere looks totally fine, except one small area where they could afford to put a pile of stuff. And they stuck an old man underneath this rubble, and he's the only one in all the mall. It's like this supposed to be this huge disaster area. And people are running around, the same people back and forth, not going anywhere.
So I do have a question regarding this movie because I was thinking of it before you said Texas, and that obviously makes the most sense because I'm trying to gather how we do a Christmas tornado movie. Does it feel very much like a Christmas movie? Because I am looking at it from what makes Christmas movies to me is the setting. So
Yeah,
obviously, they're not going to have the snowy, wintry setting down in Texas.
right.
So do they find a way to at least make it feel like you didn't just slap on, this is a Christmas movie because it's in December?
I think there may or may not be a couple of Christmas trees.
Okay. Like, as long as there's something, because when you think about it too, there's a lot of Christmas movies that are like in California or places where
Yeah,
there's not much snow, but they still feel very much like Christmas movies because they'll be centered in a mall, a convenient
right.
or like a department store with the decoration and stuff.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
there's ways to do it. So that's why I was just asking. I'm like, they're in Texas. This is
It's like
not
a
gonna
it's a half-hearted attempt, I would say.
okay.
But yeah, I mean, I recommend it. It's one of those things that if you get recommended this movie, then you kind of hope that you know what you're going into. But also take it understanding who's giving you the recommendation. Like if you don't know anything about us, then you might stumble into something that is very unexpected.
Very true.
If you talk to Ash, then maybe you'll have your night ruined for the rest of your life if you're not prepared for that.
Also very true. Yeah, one of my, since we're talking about Christmas movies, one movie I will bring up is because of Ash, and it is,
Inside.
yes. We'll just talk about Inside
Yeah.
is a Christmas movie. And actually, I just brought it up to her like yesterday, I think. I want to know what the French's obsession with Christmas is regarding horror. Because they've got like four extreme horror movies that are centered during Christmas. Because
Yeah.
you got Inside, you have Calvaire.
Yep.
There's a movie, I might be pronouncing it incorrectly, Shaitan with
I don't think I've
William
heard of them.
Castle.
Oh, okay.
It's well, it's a French movie, so obviously it's pretty depraved.
Right.
But it's also centered during Christmas. And then uh this Shudder movie that came out like a year, 2 years ago, maybe a little longer, the Advent Calendar.
Okay. I haven't seen that
Have you
either.
seen that
Yeah.
one?
No.
Okay. That movie is so good. Um, but again, I was not okay for the next few hours after watching that movie. It was a lot.
Oh no.
And that's also like it's kind of on my like under the even though I want to say it's a Shutter original and I don't really necessarily think of those as like um hard hidden gem type stuff because Shutter's pretty popular now, but I
Yeah.
still think the Advent Calendar is pretty underwatched and
Yeah.
underappreciated.
I
So
think, yeah,
it'll
it's
still
still
be a
lots of
deep
hidden
cut for me.
gems for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, even though people use Shutter, a lot of times they don't scroll past the home page necessarily. And like when new stuff comes out, people talk about the new stuff, but I think only some people really dig into the deep parts of Shutter, which would reflect more of the deeper parts of Tubi. Or no, no, there wouldn't be any crossover there. Never, strike that from the record.
Sometimes there's a little bit, not as often, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever see Dial Code Santa Claus?
So I keep confusing that one with every time I don't believe I've seen that one. I always said I
Okay.
saw it, but then I found out I was talking about the wrong movie.
Oh
Every
yeah.
time I
Easy
hear
to do.
dial code, I think of Rare Exports.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I've
I
seen
love rare
Rare
exports.
Exports. Great, weird movie. Um, Dial Code has been on my list. I need to watch
Okay.
that.
Oh, so fucking it's so good. And it's like Home Alone horror, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's nice. And there's a really great song in there that was specifically written for the movie
Is
by
it English spoken or is it foreign language film?
I'm pretty sure it's French. Yeah,
Okay.
it's. I
Double
think
check.
it's in French. Yeah,
The French love Christmas movies. I
yeah.
don't know what it is. I do
Why
not know what
not?
it is about Christmas that they're like horror, but
I
they love
mean,
it.
but wait, I want to go back to something you said before, which was a lot, and this is how my brain works too. I'm sorry, I jump way
No, go
back in
ahead.
time sometimes, because I remember it later. But you mentioned that you don't like Christmas movies, or you said that something like that. So would you want to talk about that a little more?
So Christmas in general, like, wasn't, like I said, wasn't my holiday. Um, Christmas movies, horror and non. I think what it becomes, we'll go to the non-horror stuff first, which kind of ties into the horror too, but like, obviously, you got your Home Alones, you got your Jingle All the Ways, like, you got great movies that are very entertaining. And you have movies that are very popular. There's a movie that is extremely popular in the Christmas community that I do not love. There's
What is
actually
it?
two, and I find them very boring. I don't understand the humor in them. Um, is it the or a Christmas Story?
The is it Chris? Yeah, 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 yeah.
A
Yes.
Christmas
Okay.
Story, the one with the leg lamp?
Yep.
That's a no for me. That's a chop. And National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Oh, okay. You know, I've never
I
seen that.
I don't get the appeal of those movies. Um, but then like I think there's just such an oversaturation considering that it's a small season and
Yeah.
they're just like, let's make as many movies that are almost the same as possible. But then I think it's the funniest thing is then give or take what, 5 to 10 years ago, because of social media, like Christmas movies have always been a thing, but like now the love for the Lifetime and Hallmark Christmas movies, like there's podcasts dedicated just to the Hallmark Channel Christmas movies, dedicated to the
Yeah.
Lifetime Christmas movies, and I'm just like, are these podcasts, is it all the same episode? Because the movies are the same to me.
Right. They are.
It's the movie is the
Yeah.
same plot, different town.
It's like ultimate comfort. The ultimate comfort because it has to be this exact template. It has to be this exact season, these characters, these everything. Because that it's just all about that comfort, I think, and that's why. But it's
And then when you go
yeah,
into the like when you go into the horror aspect of Christmas movies, there are some that I do love that I think are great horror movies in general, not even just Christmas movies, but like we'll talk about one of the greatest slashers of all time, Black Christmas, the original. Um, Deeply unsettling. It's a good slasher movie. It's creepy. It's
yeah,
feminist. Like there's so many things to talk about, but at the end of the day, it is a Christmas movie first, and it's even in the name.
yeah.
It's a Christmas slasher film. It's done so well. But again, same thing of like, hey, we need to make these Christmas movies. Well, let's just make an evil Santa Claus. Oh, and then the influx of Krampus.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
my
that was an influx, wasn't it?
goodness.
In like the 2000s or something.
I like the Toni Collette Krampus movie.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do wrong putting Toni Collette in anything horror. Whether it's good or bad, it's going to be enjoyable. Uh, but like those direct to streaming direct to Tubi, we'll call it. Direct to Tubi. Those Krampus movies, I was like
Ooh.
excited. I watched one movie, I forgot what it was, but it put me in the Christmas horror spirit. And I'm like, I'm gonna watch all the Krampus movies that exist on Tubi, and I'm gonna make a day of it. That was the longest day of my life. They they
That
were
seems like Mike, you set yourself up for failure on that one. I mean, you should
I
have known.
did. It felt like when I think on the Horror Mosaic episode when I said I set myself up for failure for trying to watch
Oh
a
yeah.
whole 24 hours worth of new French Extremity movies.
Right.
But those are good movies. It's just they're very heavy.
That's true. That's the big
Um,
difference there.
this was the complete opposite of I was just like I again, I give credit to all independent filmmakers. I give credit to everyone involved because I cannot make a movie, so it takes art to make something. However, those movies are not for me.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
That's great. You know
and
yourself.
like I said, to me, I just feel that they either fall under the really, really good, like Black Christmas, or
Yeah.
they go straight to Mother Krampus.
Right.
There is like a not for me at least regarding Christmas horror movies, there's not much of a middle ground. Or
Yeah.
or I would say it's like the dead zone of a middle ground. Like I don't I don't mind movies that are just fine, but I don't want to watch only just fine movies.
I gotcha. Oh yeah.
And the Christmas genre for me, but what I do love though, and especially like I said, the more ingrained I get into the horror community that I've made, the more things I find out about people. And in all honesty, I just found out that I'm basically the minority in my friend group of I don't like Christmas horror that much.
Yes. Oh,
I know
it's big. Yeah.
everybody, they're like, yeah, this is one of my favorite times because we can just be binge watching all these Christmas horror movies. And I'm like, I'm gonna need list from the you people of these Christmas movies that I need to be watching.
There
Because
are.
like
I'll tell you some too. There's some
my
good ones.
list is very small in
Yeah.
regards to like Christmas movies that I have to watch.
Yes. Okay.
Um, but the ones that I do have, they are movies that I absolutely love. There is a movie I did for a podcast episode with Rise from the Dead. It was my pick because I love this movie. It's a low budget indie movie. Um, I just saw it a few years ago and it just struck a chord with me. And it's called I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday.
Okay. I don't think I've seen that. Let me see. Let me write it down.
Um, it's an extremely bleak Christmas movie about a mother and her son hiding out in a bunker during not a zombie apocalypse, just an apocalypse. Like the whole world is dead. Like they don't leave the bunker. They have to have gas masks because I guess it's still such a desolate um Earth land that they're living in. So it's not
Yeah.
even safe to go out. But it's just their Christmas and the Christmas setting was just so perfect. It made it that much sadder. Like
Hmm.
the kid is basically reopening like action figures that he already had for Christmas.
Right.
Um, and then there's just a lot of ways to think about it. I don't want to spoil it. When you do watch it, we'll have a conversation because there I think that there's a lot of meaning to this movie.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I loved the conversation that I had on Rise from the Dead, because I got to talk in depth about my feelings towards the movie. Um, Even though it's sad, like it's a sad movie. It's very low budget, slow paced, but I have to watch it every winter, every Christmas season, because that is my Christmas movie.
Nice. Okay.
Um,
I'll definitely watch it then, and then listen to the podcast episode, and hear what you had to say, and then talk to you about it.
that's the main one. Obviously, like I said, Black Christmas. And then there's other ones, but what is one of your favorites?
Wow. Well, I have loads of favorites. Christmas Twister is not one of my favorites. It's just something that I like to throw out because it's funny. Um, but there would be. I mean, you've already mentioned Rare Exports, which is one of my favorites. There's classics. Black Christmas is my number one, of course. But actually, I want to go back and ask you something first, if you
Okay,
don't mind. As a follow, actually, I have several follow-up things,
sure.
just as my instinct from the horror mosaic. But I have to know. You were referencing A Christmas Story, which gets a thumbs down, and then you reference Black Christmas, which gets a thumbs up. So we know the director did both of those movies. Um,
He did?
yeah, did you didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Same director. Yeah.
That no way.
Yeah.
That is
Isn't that
hilarious.
crazy? Yeah.
That is so funny because yeah, they thumbs up, thumbs down. I can't believe he did both of those movies. I did
I
not know
love
that.
that this is the first time you're hearing this. What do you think about
I think that is such a wild factoid because I
that?
cannot because talk about two different directions.
Yeah.
Like from a directorial standpoint alone is like not just the fact that like, hey, I did a horror movie and I did a non-horror movie. But one, I love Christmas apparently. Like I'm doing a Christmas horror movie and a Christmas comedy. But Black Christmas just tonally is very dark.
Yes.
Like it not just because it's a horror, not just because it's a slasher, like the themes of it's a dark tone movie. It feels very, I don't want to say gross, but like just from that voice on the
Hmm.
phone, the fact that they're being stalked, like, and then just the lead and everything she goes through. Um, there's a lot to unpack in that movie. I feel that it's Black Christmas is a movie you can have so many different types of in-depth conversations, picking out themes and elements and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, on the flip side, A Christmas Story, I won't say from my
Say
standpoint because again, I don't get
say whatever
it,
you
but
need to. Yeah.
no, because like I don't agree with it, but apparently it's a great comedy. It's a
Okay.
lot of humor. Again, I don't get it, but I know that I am on the wrong side because
No, you're on the right side. That's your side. That's
this
fine.
is a widely loved movie, and I'm not gonna say that millions and billions of people are wrong. It's just not a movie that I vibe with, but they find it to be one of the funniest movies ever made. And so it's lighthearted. Uh it's comical as opposed to such a dark movie. So kudos to that director that he has that range. And then kudos for him that he has two of the most iconic Christmas movies ever made. So good for him.
Exactly.
He can
Yeah, I
fight with
think that's
Mariah
it.
for the title of the Christmas King and Queen.
Every year they thaw him out too.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really good. I just see that's why I love asking you these questions because you always give some really good insight. However, let me go back and push on one thing you said. Millions, I don't think millions of people can be wrong. Well, don't you agree that in the last week we've seen millions and millions of people can be horribly wrong?
I stand corrected. Stand corrected. Never
Okay,
mind.
thank you. Thank you
Retract
very much.
statement. You hit that.
I'll pick the next gift from under the tree. I should have brought you a gift, Mike. I'm sorry. Um, oh, the gift was telling you that my mom learned about found footage. Okay, that's
Yes,
right.
exactly. Thank you.
Let me see here. Oh, I had another question for you that I think is really fascinating. Why, I don't know why I'm whispering. Why why do Lifetime and Hallmark Christmas movie directors so often have a crossover between horror movie directors. So, for example, I can give you just a couple examples here. Steve Radzinski, who did Karis Hell. Did you watch those movies?
I did not,
Okay.
but I
Uh,
know the name.
okay. Well, he did three Karis Hell movies, and he also has a series of like seven cat Christmas movies. Misty Talley, who is the queen of shark exploitation. She did Mississippi River Sharks, Santa Jaws, and like three or four others I can't think of right now. But anyway, she is now making Christmas movies only for Hallmark or something. And the my favorite example is I Spit on Your Grave director also has a huge backlog of Hallmark movies that he's done. So why? How can you explain this?
Well, I'll say, with no disrespect to any of these people, I think because you mentioned movies that are very, very indie type
Yeah,
movies, very low budget.
right.
I think they fall under the, was is James Cameron the one that did Titanic?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like obviously from a very polar opposite end of that type of stick, I feel like maybe they're making the Hallmark movies
Mm,
because Lifetime and Hallmark Christmas movies, they're paying. So maybe
right,
they're like, "Hey, we're gonna do James Cameron said I made Titanic so I can make the movies I want to make."
right,
And
right.
maybe they use that mindset.
Yeah,
Two, they might love the cheesiness of it all. Because
right.
with the movies that you listed off and Hallmark Lifetime Christmas movies, there's an element of cheesiness and campiness to
True.
both of them.
Yep.
Uh, so I think part of it is just like, let me get my paycheck so I can do the stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
I think we fall into that category. Not to say that that's a bad thing because you got to do what you have to do. I think everybody who loves horror and does content creation and stuff, I think we all can attest to we need a day job to
Yes.
fund our
Unfortunately.
passion projects. Because
Exactly.
unfortunately, what you love isn't always gonna be what brings you the big bucks,
Right.
but you still want to do it, so you have to find a way to fund it.
Yep.
So that might be what it is. And then I think it also goes to maybe I think horror people, as much as we say like uh fall, spooky season, Halloween season, that's our season, no Christmas, no Christmas. I think it's just we don't like that Christmas comes so early now that
Yeah.
it interferes with Halloween. But if I think the horror community loves Christmas. Uh,
Absolutely they do.
I think
Yeah.
they absolutely love Christmas. It's just during September, October, they don't want to hear about it.
Yes.
And that because look at all the Christmas horror movies that are out there. So obviously it makes sense that they love Christmas. So we're gonna need directors and writers who deal with Christmas from a
Yeah.
professional standpoint as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's the little intertwining of both communities and why they do that. But you did say that, and I did immediately think, you know what, that is true. I know I'm gonna butcher his name, but he's a very big name in the horror community. He had he has this podcast with I want to say Peaches Christ, Midnight Mass. I think his name's
Oh
Michael
yeah.
Verwey.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I He's done directing and producing for like Shudder, the Chainsaw Awards. I know
Yeah.
he's directed or produced Dragula episodes and stuff, but I also know it's either Lifetime or Hallmark. He's done Christmas movies.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, the horror community, especially like in the more independent circuit and stuff, I think they love doing crossover. I think they love
Right.
jumping into both, but I do also think it's the way we said like I need a day job. If they're directors and writers, they're not just gonna go work at a law office. They're not just gonna do these things. They want to do something that is in their field of work.
Yeah.
So why not do Hallmark and Lifetime Christmas movies? Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, those are always they're pushing those out like nobody's business as much
Yeah.
as like horror is. So why not have that crossover?
I think that's exactly the answer. And in fact, I think Misty Talley said as much in an interview that I listened to with her. Was she's like, well, I don't think, and actually, I told her she was wrong about this. Um, I don't think that people watch shark movies anymore, and so I was like, no, we need you back.
Yeah.
In
No, we
so
do.
many people love shark movies. Yes, yes, we need it, and we need it from you because she's the queen of it. But let me ask you. Oh, I asked you about that already. I just want to make sure I get the follow-up questions um, before I forget any of them. Millions of people can be wrong. Oh, we already talked about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we definitely did there.
Oh, we've been talking about it all week. Um, Oh, so we were talking about Shutter and how there's some hidden gems even on Shutter. If you don't, if you're not one of those people who just watches everything. So one I found on there a few years ago, maybe you've seen it, I don't know, but it's definitely a Christmas movie. Is um, and actually don't confuse it with the other one, which is also a Christmas movie, I think. But this one is called Hosts with an S.
Okay. I have not seen that one.
Okay, it's
I
on
know
Shutter.
of
Yeah,
it. Um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, because Shudder, they really like sharing names because there's
yeah. There is
hosts,
two. Yeah.
and then there's super hosts.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So
And
that's
there's
why I was like
another
trying.
host. There's two movies called Host because one of them is the one about the screen light, the Zoom
Yeah.
chat or whatever, and then the other one is about the gay
Is
couple,
it
and I
the,
can't remember what that or was that Spiral? Oh, I was saying a Spiral and Spiral. I was confusing those. Okay, never mind.
but I think there's another host. Isn't there the host? Like, and it's like
Oh
it
yeah, the
came out,
host.
it's like an Asian monster flick.
Yeah. Exactly. And so there's the host, and then there's super host,
Um,
which is great. Yeah.
but hosts plural. I don't think I've seen that one. And the fact that you
Oh,
said it's
okay.
a Christmas movie makes me think that I definitely didn't see it.
Yeah, and it's one of those where Christmas is not like hugely important to the theme. Although if I went back and watch it, it might be in a more philosophical sense, maybe, but that doesn't really seem to directly relate to the plot anyway. But it's
Okay.
everywhere in the setting, and so they're gathering. It does relate to the plot because they're gathering on Christmas, basically. So, but it's so mean. I mean, just like some things are just mean, and this is just there's just one scene that's really mean, and it's really mean, and then the rest of it is just kind of fun. But I recommend it as a good one to watch on Shudder. That's underseen, um, and there's one scene in particular that you'll never forget. I promise you that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
like
I will, but I'm reluctantly putting it on my list.
yes. But again, it's not like it's a British film, or it's from the UK. I should say British because I don't know what that means necessarily. It's from the UK, and so it has some very dark humor, very, very, very dark humor in it. Um, so I appreciate that. Uh, Dial Code Santa, I already mentioned that one. Did you ever see Don't Open Till Christmas?
I have not. That is on my list, though.
Yeah.
I've had a few movies that are on my list I need to watch. Don't Open Till Christmas is one of them. Another one, The Dorm That Dripped Blood.
Yeah, that's a good one. Oh
That's
wow.
also on my list.
Yeah.
So those two, and I'm not reluctantly anymore. But I think as soon as some stuff finishes up in November, I think I'm gonna do like a deep dive into Christmas horror, but try to stay away from the To Be Krampus stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Yes.
think I'll just look into like yours and Ash and Sam's recommendations because
Yeah.
I don't want to. That was the thing. I think that's what killed. I was like on a Christmas kick, but because I started with those Krampus movies all in a row, that like sucked all the wind out of me. And I was just like, well, yeah, okay, Christmas horror is over. We are not doing this thing. A lot of the Krampus movies, like, that's what it feels like. I'm like, I get that we're working with a low budget here, but you also didn't put the budget into any of these actors. So could we have put it into some prosthetics?
But if there's, but here's the thing, it's like, and this is, I'm sure, and you know this already, and the independent directors I've talked to have always talked about this. Know what you're working with and work within those resources. Don't try to force a story that you can't tell. Like, why would you ever do that? You
But
know?
I do have a question for you, because since we're talking
Yeah,
about, and you might have a better understanding or opinion on it. So, okay, we use my examples of like I didn't find the Krampus movies, the ones like particularly on Tubi and stuff. I did not enjoy those.
right.
Jack Frost, I think we can all agree we know that it's not a great movie, but sometimes
Yes.
it hits that funny chord that you're like, I'm gonna watch it. I watched a movie recently, uh, just the other day to have in this conversation, that's very campy, very silly, kind of honestly so silly that it's like it should be considered a bad movie, but I had a
Yeah.
great time with it. It's
Oh,
called The
okay.
Killing Tree.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I love that
Okay.
movie.
So, but really outlandish.
Yes.
So my question though is like, how how do you get, because I would say they all are in the same vein of they're not great, but why is it like we are in find some endearing and then the others that are also low budget, not great acting, all these things, and we're like, no, no, no to this group, but we're like The Killing Tree, Jack Frost, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it applies to everything, even all the way up to David Gordon Green. Why do we excuse some level of cheese? And I think part of it has to do with self-awareness, maybe. Like, you know exactly what you're putting out there. You build it into the plot, you build it into the way the movie is made, in the way that it's sold to audiences. David Gordon Green, that's part of it, and how it's received, you know? So I think it's like, I think it's just a mixture of all of that. And that's why it's so individual to each movie. And then on top of it, you add the subjective factor that we always talk about with how movies are received person to person. So there's that element as well. For me, it's really difficult for me to be like, this movie just leaves a horrible taste in my mouth. And it's usually if it seems cynical in some way, like it's low budget and they don't have a, they, you can tell that they don't believe that low budget movies can be good, you know? So
Okay, that's a
they
fair
don't even,
point.
yeah, it's like, but that's also hard to quantify. It's like you could just feel it. You could feel something that's soulless versus something that has a lot of heart. And maybe that's where what it boils down to, you know?
Okay, yeah, that makes a perfect sense too, because like I said, the the Killing Tree right off the bat, and I obviously the Killing Tree. So I chose not to read the synopsis. I was just like, hey, this is on Prime. I'm gonna watch it. The Killing Tree. But like trying to gauge my own synopsis, I'm like, why is it called The Killing Tree? And part of me was like, this isn't gonna be about a killer Christmas tree, is it? Because that's just dumb. And I absolutely loved that opening scene
Yeah.
of the old lady like doing this whole seance
Yeah.
and thinking she's like, oh, they said just get this big thing and then you'll turn into yourself. And he got stuck as a tree,
Yeah.
as a Christmas
It's
tree. And I was
perfect.
just like, oh, Jesus. Like, but I loved that scene. I wasn't thrown off yet, but I'm like, oh man, this is funny. I'm having a good time, but I just know this is gonna get bad. And it didn't. Like, or like not bad to the point where like I couldn't watch it. It
Right.
was, and I won't even say like, oh, it's be so bad it's good. Like I liked it. I was entertained from
Right.
beginning to the end.
Yeah.
And but I looked at, I'm like, this is such a ridiculous movie. But then I think back to like, I was, even though I'll say, and I said it earlier, that like Jack Frost, we know it's not a good movie. I rented that movie a few times, even after I was duped
Oh
by
yeah,
the amazing cover art and I
sure.
knew that it wasn't a great movie. I still found myself during the winter times being like, yo, we're renting Jack Frost, making
Yes.
everybody sit through it.
And the
Um,
sequel. You have to watch the
and
sequel.
the sequel. So this one, I was just like, this felt in that vein, but I actually was like entertained and not in a, oh, I love that how bad this is. I was just like having a fun time with a Christmas horror movie.
Yeah, and I think that movie is so effective, and part of the reason is it leans into the silliness wholeheartedly, and but it doesn't sacrifice any quality either, and it doesn't like the humans um, are I mean well written is kind of a stretch, but what I mean is they're kind of well developed, you know, and you care about them in a way, and that's how you get through movies like that. Killer Sofa is another example. Rubber is
Love that
another
movie.
example. Like these are movies that do that. And but I think one of the things that reveals a lot about The Killing Tree is it's directed by the same dude who's in charge of the whole Pooniverse. So
Oh,
that's why.
really?
Oh yes, Reese Frake Waterfield. Yeah.
I did not know that. And
Yeah.
immediately, now that you said that, it all makes sense
Right? He's
because
mastered it.
I'm loving what they're doing right now. So I was one of the few people, but I didn't see it in theaters, but the first Blood and Honey.
I like that movie
I liked
personally.
it. I didn't think it was bad. I understood why people didn't like it. I saw when they had their complaints, I saw what they saw, but I'm like, listen, if you were coming out here expecting Scream, that's your fault. I
Yes.
don't know why you were expecting anything like to be so great. But so I had fun with it, but I'm like, yeah, it could have been better.
Sure.
Then I heard Blood and Honey 2 was coming out and people were like raving about it. And I'm like, I might really like this because I liked the first one that everyone didn't like. And Blood and Honey has just sold me in this whole Pooniverse. I think
Absolutely.
they got the right because I think what was missing from the first one was the writing level.
Yeah.
I think the gore was there, the kills were there. We were missing the writing, and I think we got that in Blood and Honey too. And then, I'm sorry, Tigger and Owl scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll put it. So I've watched a lot of 2024 releases. Blood and Honey 2 is not gonna crack my top 10, but it is in my top 20, and I think it's
Wow.
gonna stay there.
Beautiful.
Um, and this is from someone who I'm like, my goal, and I should reach it in December, is having watched 200 releases from this year.
Holy cow. That's amazing. I love
I'm like
that.
at 187 because I was
Let
like,
me
I want to
you're
be
gonna
able
whoop
to,
mine. I wonder mine's like 20.
I was like, I want to be able to like when I'm doing my top 10 list, be like, listen, I saw
Yeah.
what I had to see. So this is my top 10 list.
That's
But
amazing.
I love watching so much. Like I just love movies. That's my passion. That's my comfort. So I'm gonna watch as many as possible. Um, and so Blood and Honey too, it's gonna it cracked the top 20. I think it's gonna stay there. But it made me so excited for everything that they are doing now. And now that you said what you said, it makes so much sense as to
Yep.
why I loved this silly movie. Because like I said, I watched it. I think it was yesterday that I watched it. It was either yesterday or the day before. And I'm just was conflicted. Like I'm just like, why do I like this silly movie? And that's where I had the question because like I don't like XYZ movie, but this movie, which is just as silly, it's got CGI as well. Like there's all these things that are similar to these movies that I don't like. What made it special to me? And how you said it's the self-awareness. It don't take
Yep.
it too seriously, but like just make the movie that you know that it is.
Yeah.
Don't make it more, don't make it less. And the fact that you said this is the person who is basically running the Pooniverse right now. And yeah, that honestly, now I can safely understand why I like The Killing Tree because
Yeah.
I was like, that's another Christmas movie that I'm now like, this is gonna be probably in December. I'll pick a Christmas movie day and this is gonna be on it.
Sure.
It's like there's a movie that I just watched recently as well. I did put this one on Letterboxd already. It's by Alice Mayo McKay, uh,
Yes.
A
Love her
Carnage
movies.
Christmas.
And that's the only one I haven't seen yet.
Carnage for Christmas.
Yeah.
To me, she's been awesome. I do like her movies. I think there's some work to be done.
Yeah, sure.
And this one, I think this is really like shown how much she has already developed in her craft because this was a good movie. Like this, I
Nice.
was happy with it. I thought the writing was well done. I thought the plot was good. I thought they executed it well. It was a fun movie that I cannot wait to buy. I'm hoping it gets a physical release because I love the cover art and on
Yeah.
a nice like matte black slip cover, it's gonna be like the best addition to people's physical releases collections. But that's a
Nice.
movie, if you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend that one.
Great. I love her. And I wrote about her for my series, Izzy's Eerie Indies on horrorfam.com. So every month I highlight one different independent artist in the horror community and talk about some of their work. And that's my writing outlet. Um, so I talked about her a couple months ago and I was just impressed. I was like, this is amazing for someone who's not even 20 years old yet.
Yeah.
Um,
She
just
had
couldn't
what,
believe
two
it.
feature film releases at the age of 16.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, just she's a hard worker and visionary, I think. And but I actually pulled up a Christmas horror list because I'm so bad at remembering what I've seen. And it helps me. Thank you, Letterbox. Um, Whoever Slew Auntie Roo, have you heard of this movie?
I love that movie. I always
Yes.
forget that it's a Christmas movie, even though Christmas is so heavily involved in the
Yeah.
plot of the movie. But Who Slew Auntie Roo is even, I don't know if she's particularly falls into this category, but just because of the timing, I put her into my hacksploitation films.
I
Uh,
love that. Yeah, perfect.
Who Slew Auntie Roo, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane,
Oh,
Straight
yeah.
Jacket, all those movies I put together, and those movies are like a fun time for me.
Yeah.
Uh, Whoever Slew, I think that was one of the first older like movies that are like that I did
Yeah.
watch, and I was just like, I really enjoy this movie. Um, I need to watch more stuff like this, and then I fell into the rabbit hole of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. There's a few other movies with like the women's names in it,
Yeah.
and I can't think of them right now, but like all those exploitation movies, I love them. I think that's
Yeah.
a underrated subgenre that I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I the more I think about it, I'm like, I don't think there's a bad one. So maybe it is a like favorite that I just don't realize is a favorite.
Right. Well, and I love when that happens. Like you start to discover something is my favorite. I didn't know it was my favorite, but it is. Like sharks, I didn't know that was one of my things until one day I had the I step aside, outside of myself and look at myself and realize, oh wow, you actually watch a crap ton of these movies and you like them all. So that means you like it. Yeah, Shelley Winters is amazing in that movie though.
Well, since you brought it up, because you love Christmas movies, you love shark movies, I
Yep.
gotta ask,
Yep.
Santa Jaws. What do
Perfect.
you think?
I absolutely adore Santa Jaws. I wrote about Santa Jaws in horrorfam.com
Oh, did you?
when I wrote about Misty Talley, who directed it.
You're gonna have to send me
And
all these links because I want to read all of this.
yes, I'll send it to you. But yeah, I just love Misty Talley's shark movies because they have a perfect blend of humor and the the writing is really good for you don't expect it from a sci-fi film because she was doing most of these for sci-fi and she did
Yeah.
Mississippi River Sharks, Santa Jaws, Ozark Sharks, and Zombie Shark, maybe Virus Shark. I think five
Okay.
movies. So she did a lot of them, but it's that balance of humor and sincerity. Like you want to make sure that there's a sincere aspect. If it's all tongue in cheek, it's not going to work. So you have to care about the characters in some way, and she does that very well. So I think that's it. It works, and she loves the absurdity of it too.
Yeah.
So I
And I think
love
that's what's
Santa
fun about.
Jaws.
I think that's what's fun about those types of movies is, like you said before, like the fun that can be had in them. You can you can always tell when directors and their team love what they're doing
Yeah.
when it's a cash cow for them, like, or when it's something that they're like, I didn't want to do this, but you can always tell. And
Yes.
I know that some people are like, well, you don't know if they truly did. I was like, you can tell because especially when it comes to silly movies, you can tell when they believe that silly movies are something that are for people, or they're
Right.
just like, oh, we're making this movie and we're making fun of making this
Y-
movie.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that comes
Um,
through, like we said, with the heart and soul of it when you're watching it. You can feel it almost whenever it comes through on the screen, you
yeah.
know?
But
Um,
you said you had the horror list, right? Or the
oh yeah.
Christmas list?
Let me pull that back up. I keep forgetting. Okay, actually it's funny because Santa Jaws was right next to Who Slew Auntie Roo on this list. Let's see here. Oh, the mean one. Did you see that?
No, that's the Grinch one, right?
Yeah, with David Howard Thornton. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I keep forgetting that that's him in it
Yeah.
too. All right. Maybe I'll give it I have not heard great things, but I will support,
I'm not
I
recommending
will
it. I'm
still
just
support
reading it
him.
off the list. Well, actually, okay, let me say this. So I remember, actually, let me look at my review to help me remember exactly. But I think I rated it higher than it's got a 1.8 on Letterboxd. Um, what did I say? Oh, I can't even use this app right now. Oh, there it is. This won me over in the last 20 minutes or so, but it's very uneven. David R. Thornton is charming as always as the mean one. Um, I wish there was more red snow. Okay, so that means they didn't go too hard in the kills. And part of that
Oh,
is their own issue for using him as your Grinch. You know, it's like you have Art the Clown, people are going to have some expectations there.
oh yeah. That's I'm glad you kind of brought that up too, and
Yes.
read that because my only thing when you said it was David Howard Thornton?
Yes.
Is that his name? Okay. Because yeah, Art the Clown. You're expecting a great perform character performance, but along with that, you're expecting kills. Like you're
Right?
expecting good kills. So if it's kind of like off-screenish or they didn't go hard enough or they're not using the blood, I could see why people were like a little disappointed.
Yeah. And I mean, really, there's some things to like. There was some really funny dialogue in there, and he's great in the main part, of course. But he's really giving Jim Carrey Grinch without the humor because he doesn't speak. Just like, all right, well, does he speak? I don't think he does, if I remember. Anyway, let's move on from that one. It's not
Yeah.
worth talking about, really.
Okay,
It's
sounds good.
funny because there's no snow in the whole movie. It's just filmed in like
Oh,
Southern California.
okay. Well, then they missed a lot of opportunities.
Yes,
You
it's
can't have a
very cheap.
Grinch movie and you're not in the center of Whoville.
Right, exactly. Did you ever see Sleigh Bells? Um,
Sleigh Bells. I did not. I know I'm already picturing the cover art.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen the
On Tubi,
movie
probably.
on Tubi. I've seen the poster art like on Twitter. I have not watched the movie. Or
So
maybe
this is one
it
maybe
doesn't have like a wrestler in it, does it? It's
I
not
don't think
Goldberg or
so.
Steve
No,
Austin.
Goldberg is in different. I think it's also called Sleigh Bells or something like that, or Santa
Okay.
Sleigh. Santa Sleigh. Um, Goldberg was my favorite wrestler as a kid.
Nice.
I don't know why, but anyway, Sleigh Bells is the guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show who played Brad. Um,
Okay.
what's his name? I can't think of his name. But anyway, he's Santa in that. And there's Krampus, but it's a much better Krampus than you're thinking about. But it's not really about them. It's more about the three. They're like three influencers on social media, like TikTok type thing, and they're going to go to this Christmas village and make a video about it. You know, it's an abandoned Christmas village, and while they're there, they meet Santa, and Santa needs their help to defeat Krampus. And it's really good, actually. I was surprised because but he is so good as Santa, and that's part of what makes it so great. Krampus looks really good, and one of the people who stars in it as one of the women was an actual social media influencer who was quite famous at the time, and she went missing after this movie, and I
Oh,
don't know if they ever found her. Isn't that
that's
crazy?
that is crazy. And then that's also kind of like, was there like an investigation into this movie because of it?
Well, no, it wasn't because of the movie. It was like after long after it was released.
Oh, okay, long after. I thought like
Yeah.
shortly after. I'm like, whoa.
It's like,
Like,
shoot, is Santa real?
uh, no, okay, I'll put that on my list as well. Yeah, so we're gonna go offline and you're just gonna send me a list because I need to add
Oh
these.
yeah.
Uh, but no, you were talking about like that he was a good Santa, and I think that's what it comes down to is when you're doing Christmas horror movies that is centered around Santa in any type of way, you have to nail the Santa. Like
Yes.
that's the pivotal role. That's what makes or breaks certain Christmas horror movies.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a movie that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I like the Santa in it. Um, oh, why can't I think of the name now? I think it's also called A Christmas Tale, A Christmas
Oh,
Story,
Christmas Horror
A
Story?
Christmas Horror Story.
Yeah, 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 yeah. With George Buza as Santa. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it also is it the same one where William Shatner's in it?
Is he in that one?
Because
Yeah,
William
I think
Shatner plays a
he's
radio
the
host.
narrator. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's
So
right.
that one, it's not my absolute favorite because
Yeah.
one, like I said, Christmas horror isn't up there for me, and neither is anthologies. So
Oh,
now you
okay.
have both. Um, but the Santa I thought was so well done in there. I was a creepy Santa.
Yeah.
Um, I liked him, so I was able to muster through
Mm,
the whole movie. I think what part of it too was that it's kind of a long movie for
it
being
is.
Christmas horror, because I think that along, and I'll put this on found footage as well. Found footage and Christmas horror should not be longer than 85 minutes. We're not even
Agreed.
going 90. Like
I agree.
they need to be short and to the point.
I 1,000% agree with that. Yeah.
But that one, there's a movie that it's growing on me. It's a Christmas zombie film,
Oh,
A
and in the
Command for
Apocalypse?
Christmas.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, no. All right. Well, now we're cutting that one off because
Okay.
Anna and the Apocalypse. That that might be my favorite Christmas movie.
I mean, that's hard to beat, right?
That's and again, I don't like musicals. I'm not a musical person. I really do not like musicals. But
Oh,
I found
wow.
out that I love horror musicals.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I love Repo the Genetic Opera. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show, Little Shop of Horrors,
Yeah.
etc., etc. But Anna and the Apocalypse,
Ooh.
such a good movie. It hit emotional triggers. It was just like it was funny. The gore was there. But no, the movie I was talking about, A Cadaver Christmas,
Yeah, I need to watch that.
very like you saw it?
No, I haven't seen it. I need to
Oh,
watch it. Yeah.
it's a fun, like sophomoric humor type of movie. Basically starting off like literally as like a punchline of a joke of like a janitor and a cop walk into a bar. Like that's literally the setup of the movie. And then it turns out that there's like this, they're not calling it zombies at first, it's cadavers that are alive. And it's
Mm.
just this funny, like tongue in cheek. There's a lot of like super basic humor punchlines, but they land. At times it gets a little, the characters get a little annoying, but they're supposed to be annoying. Uh, but it was gory. I had fun with it. I wasn't, I did not waste my time watching it. And then just in general, like we said, the name is what sold me. A Cadaver Christmas. I love
It's a
that
great
name for a
name.
horror movie. Uh, that's the main reason why I watched it. The cover art was good, so I put it on and I had a good time with it.
I love that. That is a brilliant name for a movie. And as you're saying this, uh, it was making me think of another movie, but then I couldn't think of what that was. But did you ever see Secret Santa?
No, I
This
I don't think
one
I've
did
even heard of that one.
this one was surprising. I'm trying to remind myself exactly. It's like a family that gathers together at Christmas, rich kids, that type of thing. Actually, you know what? It's very similar to Violent Night in terms of its plot. But I think that was a pretty decent one. I can't, but let's move on from that because I can't remember enough about it to talk about it. Let me
Well,
look at, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
there was a movie I watched this morning, and I want to say you were part of the reason. I know Sam from Our Life in Horror was part of the reason because she posted it online of some of her favorite Christmas movies, and I think
Okay.
you agreed with her. So I watched this morning Dead End.
Oh, yes.
That was a fun time.
Yeah.
I don't know
Great
how
cast.
I don't know how Christmassy it was, other than just like, hey, this is set in Christmas time.
Yeah,
But I think maybe that's why I liked it even more, as they didn't try
probably.
to keep fitting in like weird Christmas things to it, other than we're on our way to family for Christmas.
Oh,
Great cast,
yeah.
absolutely great cast. Um, Wild script, like the things that like Lin Shay was saying. I'm like, Lin
I
Shay,
love.
okay.
Oh,
I had a fun time. I was not bored, and they talk about a movie that revved it up early on.
mm, yeah,
15 minutes in, and they started the movie. Like,
yeah,
and they never let go.
yeah.
And then
So good.
I didn't know where this movie was going. And I think that's what I liked about it was I was very intrigued by the story, and I'm just like, where we're still on this road. Where are we going? And
Right.
where they took me, I didn't expect it.
Yeah,
I
and that's
didn't
great.
guess any of that movie. I thought it was a great movie. Um, Again, the cast phenomenal. Uh, Story great. I liked it. I was a big fan of it,
I
and I
love
just watched
that.
it
It's
this
like
morning.
you don't know where you're going, so you're kind of heading into a dead end, um, in a way yourself,
Fun.
which is pretty cool. Did you ever see? Well, you talked about Carnage Christmas, which was Alice May Mackey, but did you ever see? I think Christmas Carnage is what it's called.
No,
So,
that sounds fun. Anything with Carnage. Oh,
Mike,
okay,
this is
maybe not.
like, well, I don't know. This is the thing. So, this is a weird, an extremely rare category of movie where I turned it off. And because I was just maybe it's just I wasn't ready for that type of thing in the time of day I was watching. I don't know, but it starts out with real intense, like Santa breaks in, and then there's SA of the mother in front of the children, and like it's just like.
Okay, yeah. That might not be something I put on anytime soon.
I was like, that's the very opening scene, and I'm like, this is. I've seen Silent Night, Bloody Night, Silent Night, Deadly Night, and it's a similar thing. It's like trauma to the children, and
Yeah.
same with Christmas Evil. They see that happening in and that's the root of the trauma. So I get that, like, but there's just like, for me, there's a I don't know if it's a content thing or maybe it's like what we were talking about before. It just comes down to each individual movie and how it's presented. So maybe just the presentation was too much for me in the moment. I don't know. Have you had that experience before?
I think so, but I also think given what you said, like it's about, I think this is where timing and how you approach these types of scenes and stuff is very important because uh I don't want to watch a movie that's mean-spirited.
Yeah.
I and I think that's so funny, a funny phrase that we use in the horror community, but we use it a lot because obviously we're watching horror, we're watching violence, we're watching people die, we're watching really deep, strong, emotional types of movies regarding death, murder, etc. But so to say like, oh, I don't want it to be mean-spirited, and it's like, well, he just chopped this person's head off.
Right,
It's
right.
like, and you're just like, yeah, but that's not what I mean.
Yes.
Um, I don't want to watch something that looks like they are. It's so funny to say in regarding horror because it's like I don't want to watch someone making a violent movie for the sake of making a violent movie that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Um,
it's where like
and
it's hard to tell because there's also an unspoken quality, like you know it when you see it type thing.
yeah,
So that's why it's kind of hard to
and
describe.
yeah, and it's funny because I'm gonna bring up a movie that some people do call mean-spirited, and I think it comes down to individual people.
Right.
I don't. And I watched this movie recently, and I had just the best theater experience with it, and it is my newest favorite Christmas horror movie of all time. I know you weren't the biggest fan of it,
No, go
uh,
ahead.
but Terrifier 3 was such a great Christmas film. I was so giddy from the first scene. I don't
Yeah.
know what it was because I'm not the biggest Terrifier franchise fan. I was not impressed with one and two.
I was gonna
But
ask you about this. Yes.
but so I was like, I still want to support this film
Oh,
because
absolutely.
independent film, no marketing. I want horror to have the numbers. I want horror to
Yep.
have the money. So I'm gonna go watch this. I'm so happy I did, and I'm so happy that I pulled the trigger to see it in theaters because I was like a kid on Christmas Day.
Hey,
I
there we
so much
go.
joy for the type of movie it was. Like, I know that's gonna sound crazy to people. They're like,
No, no,
okay,
no, no,
that's
no.
not normal. But like, I was just watching it, and I was just so happy regarding like the way it was a Christmas movie because it was a
Right.
full-blown Christmas movie. I enjoyed the plot this time. I enjoyed the character of Sienna Shaw. I thought she knocked it out of the park. I loved so many relationship dynamics that were had in it, but it still was a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Um, through and through. And I just thought they took it places that I didn't expect. And yet I was still just like feeling very lighthearted given how violent this movie was. I
I
was
get it.
just like,
Yeah.
I the movie was over and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this put me in the Christmas spirit.
I love that.
I'm feeling this holiday joy right now.
Yeah, that's great.
I I need them to release this movie so that I can start watching it during Christmas time. Uh,
They will.
I just could not believe how much I love this movie.
That's
Um,
awesome, though. I love
from a
that.
slasher perspective, from a Terrifier perspective, and from the Christmas horror, I'm just like, this top tier. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
Probably the only Art the Clown movie that I can put on repeat.
Nice. Wow. Okay. So I love to hear that perspective, and actually, I agree with the majority of it from my personal experience of it. And because I didn't talk, I should have talked more about the things that I loved, but I was frustrated by some of the things I didn't immediately after. So it'll probably grow on me more over time as well, is my suspicion. As the first movie grew on me over time. And I listened to your first part of the Terrifier discussion on Rise from the Dead. So I knew about your experience with All Hallows Eve and Terrifier, but I've yet to hear your thoughts about Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3, but now I kind of have an idea. And yeah, Terrifier grew on me over time as I started to understand more about what they were doing. And Terrifier 2, I was an immediate fan of, and my theater experience was amazing. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that in theaters and ever seen any people walk out of theaters. Um, and I was the only one left with my friend at the end, and it was great. So Terrifier 3, I think the problem was I became victim to the anticipation and the hype and expectation. Maybe that was the big victim. Uh, so I and this again boils down to what hits for you. The number one thing I was looking for was topping the bedroom scene. And to me, they didn't do it. Uh, but that's only because the stuff they did isn't stuff that triggers me personally. There is some stuff in that bedroom scene that did, so it's like that's why. And I loved so many of the moments in Terrifier 3. And to me, it was about moments. And I loved like the entire first half. I did not like, one of my biggest gripes was I didn't like the family that they focused on, like her niece and her aunt and uncle. To me, I was like, ugh, please. I would much rather focus on Jonathan and Sienna together or something. And I get why they did these things. It just didn't, that part didn't work for me. I want to focus more on art. I love Vicky, but I wanted to focus more on art in the final third act there, and those are my big complaints. But I think I have nothing but love for that opening scene. It was just one of the best scenes in any Terrifier movie. Um, there's some really clever kills going on. I love the bar scene. Uh, it's so
The bar
funny.
scene is so
It's
funny.
like and just great. And I'm a huge fan of Clint Howard and Dan Roebuck. I've been a fan of Dan Roebuck since I was a kid. So just to see him as Santa is like my dream come true. And to see him get killed was very sad. Um, so there, and trust me, I was in theaters laughing, having a great time with everybody else, and just loved so many things. I was a little disappointed in the big scene, only because it felt like it wasn't like I wanted to get all up in it like we did in the bedroom scene, but it felt a little off screen. And there were some other off screen moments, like Jonathan. Maybe that will come up later. I don't know. But what do you think about that stuff?
Um, I understand what you're saying, and this is where we said, and I do love this, is because I think it does come down to personal preference. Because
Yeah.
one thing that you brought up that was kind of like one of your small gripes about it is one of my strongest points of it.
Okay.
Um, I I love Art the Clown in this movie. And in all of them, Art the Clown is a fun character. I'm glad we have a new horror icon. But this movie, what I loved about it was Vicky.
Yeah. I mean,
I
she's
was
great. Don't get me
so
wrong.
sold on her. And I think because of the other movies, again, I didn't, I think the writing needed to be stronger, the plot needed to be stronger in both one and two. I don't agree with people that say that they didn't have a plot. They had a plot. It wasn't strong enough because they were focused on the killing part, which, hey,
Sure.
that worked for them. Look at how much people talk about these movies.
Right.
Um, but in this third one, I was so connected to Vicky.
Yeah.
I give me more of her. I love art, but like she was my focal point in this
Oh,
movie.
wow. Okay.
Especially when the further we got, because I was just like, and maybe it does come down to a little bit that she talks.
Yeah. Her voice is
Uh
great.
like and but it's also like art, fun, same like Jason and Mike. Jason and Michael Myers, like they're good villains. I like them. I like their movies and their kills and stuff. But I prefer, from a horror icon point, Chucky and Freddy because they have
Ah,
personality.
I see. Wisecracking and things. Yeah.
So, but I do love Jason so much. But where Vicky, like, I felt that it was like she was mean. This was a very
Yes.
mean movie,
She
but it
is.
wasn't mean-spirited.
Oh, come on. He's wow. Yeah, that's not
But
mean-spirited.
no, it
It's
was
funny as
petty
hell. It's
because, oh
petty
my
and
God,
funny.
the first the first slap across the head, I thought I was going I thought I was going to
Uh,
have to leave the theater because I was just cracking up so hard
yeah.
and people were just looking and I was just it was the funniest thing and then he kept doing it and I'm like, poor Lauren, because I'm
Right.
like, I think he
Right.
actually did hit her.
Yeah.
So this poor
It's
woman, she's probably and it's not just one take. So
right. Oh my God.
so like
And
this poor woman, she got
she's
slapped up across the head so many times. Um,
oh
but I sort of agree with you with the whole like I would have preferred Lauren and John or Sienna and Jonathan's dynamic closer together rather than apart.
right.
But I think that's what made the movie still though, because Jonathan being in college introduced us to those characters that gave us a big moment.
Yeah.
Um, Sienna brought in the new characters that gave us a later moments, which while I found them to be somewhat dispensable,
Yes, that's the thing.
I think they were dispensable to me as a viewer, but I don't think we would have had Sienna's big scenes hit had it not been for those family members. Because I will say, Lauren did great as Sienna in two, but I think she really, really shined in this movie because I don't think there was enough in the writing to give her such a emotional scene in two, whereas in this movie, this was all about emotion. It's about family, it's about loss, it's about survivor's remorse, and all these other different types of deep, impactful emotions. And Lauren Lavera just delivered a performance that I was just so in awe of her, and I really hope we see so much of her. Um, she really like delivered a performance that I didn't I get from like certain things that I've seen Melissa Barrera in, and I think she's an amazing actress. So to see it from someone else already, and it like I was emotional with her in this movie.
Yeah.
I felt what she felt, which I thought, given this type of like, it's a I know sometimes it's used in a derogatory way in the horror community, but this is a gore horror movie. Like this is
Yes.
for the gore horrors. It's not typically meant to be like this great plot line like The Exorcist or The Omen. But I think this one had it. I just don't think we've come to expect it. We haven't come to expect it from the Terrifier franchise. So it was a
Right.
nice thing to see, but we needed those family members for Sienna's growth, for
Yeah.
Sienna's emotional breakdown. Because then, not to spoil, but then that what we thought something was,
Right.
and this is where I said, and I know you are not alone when a lot of people are not happy with what they feel is an off-screen kill. I think we
Yes.
discussed it. Think I
It may
don't
not
think we
be an
think it
off-screen
is
kill.
what it
Yeah.
is,
Right.
but for this particular movie, I think it needed to be set up that way for that impact. I don't think it would have worked if we saw it.
Well,
Um,
so but that's where it comes in because that is such a balancing act there. That one is a very fine line because you have a character that you actually have invested movie time into and emotional energy into. You've seen him take his beating on screen before, and so he has just as much stake in this as his sister does. And these other people, you've never seen them on screen before. You've never seen him interact with Lauren. And so like we know for the story that she has this connection because they tell us, but the
yeah.
problem is you don't really see it. You see it with the niece a little bit, but it's still like it's kind of like the Dawn and Buffy season 6 or whatever it was. They come out of nowhere and then all of a sudden they have this deep connection. You never even mentioned them before. Maybe they did in these other movies and I forgot. But it didn't make an impact. So I think that's why in that moment I was more confused. I was like, okay, they okey doked us. They pulled the bait and switch. But am I supposed to think this is actually him? Are they going to trick us again? Or that's why it didn't have the thing for me.
And I think, and again, yeah, because people are going to perceive it very differently. And I think I've said it on your podcast or your show before, and I've said it on others. I'm not afraid to say that I'm a very emotional person. I will
Yes.
cry and I will talk about myself crying. Um, I felt her emotion, and this is why I loved what we think happened, is because I was still sad given who I thought it was, but
Yeah.
when it started sinking in and they're like playing that extra music where you know something's shifting and it starts clicking, I just felt my stomach drop. I felt my chest cave in, and when
Oh,
she realized it,
yeah.
I cried.
Oh, yeah.
In a Terrifier movie, I
See, I
cried.
wish I had that experience. That's what I want to experience. I wish I had the same thing that you have, Mike.
And that for me would not have happened
Sure.
any other way because it was the bait and switch caught me off guard because
Okay. Yeah.
I personally didn't see it coming. Now some people
Oh,
might
I was
have.
expecting it. That's the problem. So I
I
think the
think
reason was because of the way they filmed the container it was in with the thing
yeah.
over it. To me, when I see that image, it suggests that they want you to think it's something underneath it, but it's Art and Vicky. So they're gonna be messing with them. So to me, I was already thinking. I also predicted that she would give birth to his head in the sequel. So maybe I have some intuition about Art. I don't know.
No, and that's the thing when it comes to writing because you have, like you said, you have to walk a line as a director, as a writer, because you're putting something out to millions of people to watch who are all they have different ways of
Sure.
thinking.
Yeah.
I am the perfect audience member for people, and I won't call it lazy writing because it's not, but like I don't see things coming.
Oh,
You
okay.
can like when people are like, "Oh, I saw that coming from a mile away." I'm like, I'm the one that's like, "Oh,
Oh, okay.
so easy to pull one over on." So
That's
they're
fun
waiting
though.
for me.
That's
Like
more
that's
fun,
how I
Mike.
feel. So, like you said, this bait and switch, and I think that's what it is why it didn't have the impact for you and for a lot of people because they saw that bait and switch coming. If I
Yeah,
had, I
yeah,
don't think it would have impacted me the same either because it's like you're expecting it, so you lose that little bit of the adrenaline that I got. other
Yeah.
people didn't get because there was no anticipation, there was no um, apprehension, there was no feeling that dread coming because you're like, this
Yeah.
is what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then it happened. So you weren't caught off guard.
That's
Whereas
it.
me,
Yeah.
like, I'm nails to the seat, and I'm just like, what's happening? What's happening? And
That's
then
great.
that happens, and I'm the only one who's bawling because I'm the only one
Uh,
who didn't see it coming.
but that's great. I'm glad you can experience that.
Yeah, but again, how many, and there are plenty of people like me, but there are plenty of people like you who have the intuition of knowing who the killer is before the reveal, like type of stuff. So as a director, as a writer, people involved, you have to figure out the line of what can
Yeah.
we do, because if you do it too easy where even I can see it coming, you're probably not doing a good job because the majority of people aren't going to like it. Um, So you need to work on that.
Right.
Uh, I think that they felt that they had something there, so they went with it. And like I said, for someone like me, it worked. For
Yeah.
other people, it didn't work. But I think everybody was left still with excitement for what's to come.
Absolutely. No question about it. And also only love for Damien Leone and his whole team and for putting this out into the universe and doing with indie horror what we would love to see happen for everyone. And so we want to always promote Terrifier and um, yeah, I think that's the main important thing about all of this is
Yeah.
support indie horror forever, you know?
Agreed. And then to tie it into the Christmas part is like majority of Christmas horror is independent.
Right, exactly.
So support indie horror. Um, for a lot of people, there are a lot of Christmas horror gems. Find them, promote them, tell people
Yep.
about them. Because again, I don't think that this is the genre for me, but I'm always willing to like listen to people's recs. And we've talked about a few already that I'm just like, I enjoyed Dead End. I just
Right.
found out about that movie two 2 days ago, maybe. Never knew it
Oh, okay.
existed.
Yeah.
And I had a great time with it today. The Killing Tree, found it by accident. Had a great time with it. So
Yeah.
independent horror just needs, that's why these podcasts, YouTube channels, just social media in general, talking about it. Our our voice, the horror community's voice, is the most important thing to indie horror.
Yeah.
Without our voices, there is no more indie horror.
Absolutely. We
So
have to
we
talk
have to
about it.
talk about it.
Amen. Well, Mike, I appreciate everything you do. And I hope it keeps going well for you. And I've kept you for 2 hours, so I'll let you go. But I think we got lots of stuff in here. We can put together some entertaining little video, and I'll just edit it down. Um, but thanks for coming and talking to me today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I had a great time with this, and I just wanted to say kudos to all of the things that you are doing. The Horror
Thank
Mosaic
you.
is such a great project.
Mm.
I cannot wait to keep seeing all the new episodes
Uh,
because I just love seeing the different people in the horror community. And I think even though you don't show yourself on these interviews, I talked about it with other people. You are a great interviewer. Like
oh,
you
thank
pull
you.
out so much emotion and so much uh, things that we didn't think about from
Yeah,
us. So
I
I think you're a
appreciate
very
it.
great interviewer. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, and I thank you all for coming and talking to me because you all know more about movies than I do. You could talk about them better than me. I'm just good at asking questions, so I appreciate it. And it's so much fun to get to know everyone. And um, yeah, I just think it's a beautiful experience. So thank you for your compliments as well. It means a lot to me and keeps me going when things are like, oh, I don't fucking feel like editing anymore.
Yeah.
So, and I hope you keep doing everything you're doing because it's so much fun to see everything. And yeah, anytime I can help with anything, just let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Well, Merry Christmas to you, and I'm
Merry
sure I'll be
Christmas.
talking to you very soon.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas. Have a good one.